and welcome to Visions. I'm Mirella Rich. Today our guests are Barrister Kurt Esser and Dr Bill Haebich from the Justice Project. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mirella.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background, Dr Bill?
Well, I'm a mathematician by training, and I'm in a partnership with some other people in a small business consultancy, and we consult to large enterprises, both public and private.
Right. And how did you get involved in the Justice Project?
Well, I was actually introduced by a neighbour across the road from me, actually 6 months before I decided to spend less time at work and more time becoming involved in human rights issues, and I was looking for an appropriate vehicle for that, and fortunately Michael Conn, who lives across the road from me, introduced me to the Justice Project.
Beautiful. And how did you get organised? How did you organise and get involved with the Darebin Forum?
Well, it came quite a bit later. Kurt was giving an address to a group called the Unitarian Church in East Melbourne, and the idea of having a forum had been around, but this was the key for the first forum. They got talking with the leaders of the church after Kurt's address, and they decided that they would try holding the first forum in the electorate of Bachman. And Kurt asked me if I could help organise the event from our end in cooperation with the Unitarian Church.
Beautiful.
The idea is, sorry to interrupt, the idea is that there are a number of community organisations based in Darebin, but in other places as well. For example, the Unitarian Church is actually in East Melbourne, but members of that church are spread across Melbourne. But that church has a particular interest in human rights, and particularly in campaigning for human rights, and so it was a good mix for us, because the Justice Project is also very interested in human rights and the promotion of it, especially in the lead up to the election. So we apprehended that there were other community groups out there who are also interested in orchestrating a forum in Darebin. Darebin is an area that there are a lot of people who are interested in the protection of human rights, largely because it has quite a big migrant population, doesn't it?
Big migrant population, a degree of poverty, a high proportion of Aboriginals in the community, and quite a significant proportion of aged people.
Right. And who's organising the forum, and what is its purpose?
Well, the people who are doing it on the ground are particularly a representative of the Unitarian Church named Gary Harper, who has lots of contacts in the area. So he's dealing with the local community groups and the council and so forth. And we're providing advice and high-profile speakers and just generally cooperating with them for the overview.
And what plans do you have to publicise the event?
We haven't launched a big publicity campaign yet, but we will go to local radio, the local press. We're about to print off a large number of flyers which will be distributed around the neighbourhood. And we also operate through the various community groups that I referred to before.
And there's Channel 31.
And there's Channel 31.
Oh, yeah, here right now. And what has the response been to the forum?
Well, so far the community response has been very, very good. I mean, there is quite a lot of groundswell, isn't there, Bill, interest in human rights in the lead up to the election. The Dr. Hanif matter, which is an ongoing matter, seems to have enlivened a lot of people, and a lot of people are questioning whether our laws really achieve the kind of balance that most Australians, I think, would like to see. We'd like to see, I think, in Australia, tough laws about anti-terrorism, but tempered with the proper protections for human rights. And really that's what we're after. We think that the government has probably gone a little bit overboard. They don't seem to quite have the balance right at the moment. And I think that there are a lot of Australians who take that view, that the government has really exceeded its powers, and we'd like to see a kind of moderation of some of these powers.
And how do you... Yeah,
sorry. I was going to say, even though we haven't gone into our full launch yet, we've been very encouraged by the responses of these community groups. So we've got 11 groups who are sponsoring the forum. And
fantastic.
And in particular, the Victorian Equal Opportunities Commissioner is going to be a special guest at the event. So we think there's a great potential here.
And how do you think the government can do changes with the anti-terrorism?
Well, what we're expecting could happen is, if there are a sufficient number of politicians who return to Canberra in the next election who have a real commitment to their electorates about things such as a Charter of Rights, we think that that would be a very big step in the right direction. Victoria, happily, has a Charter of Rights and Responsibilities, and it acts as a kind of brake. And Helen Zoki, who's the chair of the Equal Opportunity and Human Rights Commission, she knows about this because she's under a statutory duty to impart this information, but she's an excellent speaker and very well informed about how the Charter works. And it would be our expectation and hope that through these community forums we'll be returning people to Canberra who are sensitised to the idea of a federal charter. So while we have a charter in Victoria and that's all very well, we think that there's a real need for a Charter of Human Rights federally, and Helen Zoki would be a great person to speak on that particular subject.
And what will be the issues on the Charter of Rights?
The Charter involves a number of different things. It articulates exactly what we've always taken for granted as being our natural rights. The right to free speech, the right to freedom of association, the right to be free of arbitrary arrest. These kinds of things we've all been taken for granted by Australians in the past, but the difficulty is that the government seems to have found a way of passing legislation which directly breaches those rights. So in the first instance, the Charter sets out the traditional rights that we all thought that we had, and there are various mechanisms whereby Parliament can keep account of legislation that's introduced which appears to cut across those rights. And although there's no direct bar from Parliament enacting legislation which does cut across those rights, Parliament has to justify it. And if there are ongoing breaches of the rights of citizens that is articulated through fresh legislation, then there are requirements and there are mechanisms whereby these issues keep coming up into Parliament. So Parliament has the opportunity of reconciling its legislation to the principles set out in the Charter, or justifying to the people why these ongoing breaches occur in the legislation that they're introducing.
Beautiful. We're about to go to a break now. You're watching Visions. Stay with us. We'll be back with more very shortly.